And so wealth is by any means is not at all a status, but it's a condition of the human being to identify and promote culture that can bring to accumulation of wealth.
Welcome to the Marberg podcast, Redefining Wealth, where we sit down with inspiring personalities, give insights into the world of Marberg and try to redefine and think about what wealth really means. Today my guest is Dr. Alessandro Nitti, Marberg's chairman of the advisory board and one of the most renowned family officers in Europe. Thank you very much, sir, for sitting down and taking your time here in the beautiful city of Milano. How are you doing?
Thank you very much for your invitation. I'm thrilled to be here with you today and going through fantastic topics that we can express to our people internally and potentially to our most relevant investors.
Thank you very much. So, sir, let's dive right into it. You studied in the US and in Italy and worked for some of the biggest investment banks in the world. Could you tell us a little about your career and how you eventually became part of the Marberg family?
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, indeed. It's a pleasure to go through my past. And I always do that very with lots of enthusiasm, especially when I speak to youngsters like yourself. Yes, I started my career many years ago. It was 1994. Financial environment was very different from the one we're in today. I started in capital markets, working on a trading floor for an Italian bank that at that time invested in my future. And I was a trader in fixed income and rates. I was heading a book of non-government bonds while the process of the conversion to euros was taking place between 1995 and 1999. Those period has been very dense for me as I was a junior trader on this desk. I started traveling a lot and having to do with the proprietary book of the bank and also being invested with the responsibility of market making the fixed income non-government bond of the bank. I learned fast, I learned a lot. And from that moment on, I started traveling to the US, where I also completed my MBA at the New York University, at the Stern School of Economics in New York. Mm-hmm. And then I was particularly attracted by the concept of crisis back at that period already. What happened during this transition phase to euros, where it was very interesting for the United States, of course, was the largest monetary exercise at that time tried. I remember very clearly that some crises, I can mention some of them, of course, the Russian crisis, the Argentine crisis in 2001, the Far East crisis in 1999, were so frequent and recurrent that, of course, a young trader like myself was self-questioning about the capacity of financial market to be sustainable. Mm-hmm. The discussion is still open. What I can tell you is that through the several crises that in the past 20 years have occurred in capital markets in general, not only Europe, are a reason why people like ourselves made the decision of organizing private capital to provide a better response to the private sector needs on how to reorganize our financial means, our knowledge, and our skills. Mm-hmm. That's why I, after so much traveling and so much working with the investment banking around the world, I made a decision of getting independent starting my own business in Switzerland and in Italy, partnering with the Marbeck Group and the very relevant culture that you have at Marbeck. Culture that I have encountered and have shared since the very first days of meeting with Magister Spari, the president of the group, such that today, after a few years of co-investing and sharing projects across Europe, we decided to promote a more integral culture for investments that could sound not only as a product machine, as a product engineering capacity, but moreover a culture to promote growth for people, growth, of course, wealth that people are responsible for, but most of all solutions for those who have not experienced our privilege to work and understand more about capital markets.
Mm-hmm. So you spoke about culture, and we'll come back to that later on in the interview. You live right now in Switzerland and Italy, right? What are the advantages of the different climate, and also what seasons do you like the most? Because as I experience now, Milano is beautiful right now, and I came from the storm from Switzerland. So could you elaborate a little bit on that?
That's a terrific question. Thank you very much. And I keep on discussing this point with my daughters and my family. Well, you were very young. When I was your age, I remember very clearly that the first steps of the United Europe were taking place. After a couple or even 3 decades, the experiment has not yet come to an end.
Mm.
And what I believe our responsibility as citizens of this wonderful Europe concerns very much how we live our life. And so rather than expecting results or empowerment from the public sector, what we are doing is trying to live fully the potential of Europe. And we cannot speak about Europe without mentioning the cultures, with the plural, that have crossed Europe since its very first origins 2,000 years ago. And so the privilege that I am offering myself, the people that I work with, and of course my family, is to live in first person this experience of multi-language and cultural approach. I still believe that provided the infinity of resources that we have in Europe, we should be using them. Our responsibility is to correctly use these resources in order for them to be better understood and redistributed. And so, to come to your finally to your question, I believe that only traveling and experiencing these several sources of knowledge, we can fully appreciate the potentials of Europe for the future in peace, making the effort of understanding each other much more. Switzerland is for sure a huge example in history of how dominances can be rebalanced, making sure that different communities can share their values, understanding that there are limitations in the power to offend or to control the other. And I believe this is a value that should be considered also in Europe, among different nations of what we hope could be a much faster and much more integral way of seeing the European integration.
Mm. So, as you said, you and Marbeck are united by a shared culture that also the financial world and life itself should be approached from a more holistic standpoint. What does wealth mean to you when you think about it?
We are touching a very few points, very relevant questions that I believe have impact not only on our life but on our families through generations. Well, my research is not yet to an end to this point. So I'm still investigating the way wealth and the consequence of wealth impact our communities. So I will provide you my current view on this after these 20 years of experience in capital markets, but also as a father of 4 daughters. the concept of wealth is connected, I believe, not only to the object of being wealthy. It's more a cultural status that concerns multi-level dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
And so if, as I said, wealth is impacting not only persons, people, but most of all families, then family is the first group, the first basic
institution.
Yes, I would say it's more than an institution because it's not ruled. So it's family can be seen as a way to promote the growth of people at all ages on a continuous way, knowing that family will persist regardless of how governments and institutions will rule about families.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for this persistence is based on the natural behavior of the human being and his tendency to protect what he believes is relevant for his beloved. And as a matter of fact, the consequences of the vision about a community to protect families is impacting the way work and resources are distributed. And so wealth is by any means is not at all a status, but it's a condition of the human being to identify and promote culture that can bring to accumulation of wealth. If this statement of mine has some ground, then I would like to reconnect to some milestones, to some principal words. And I must record to the Latin language. Abundantia can be connected to the concept of the capacity to identify and bring together values.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side, the concept of abundanza has been evolving through decades and through the evolution of the spirit of how communities have been brought together in the past 500 years, if not more, with the concept of capital. Capital has much more to do with the concept, with the intuition, with the experience, I would say more properly, with the experience of a right mean, a right tool. So capital is a tool. And so if we combine abundanza, which has to do very much with talents, and the concept of capital, then we come very close to the idea that I have about what the private sector should be doing with these two pillars, the abundanza of talents and the right use of capital. The private sector has a responsibility today to relaunch a better understanding of what the right use of capital can be in order to promote a more equal access to all talents, to fair conditions, to fair opportunities. The equal access of opportunities to all youngsters and visitors of Europe is the only way I can foresee considering the future for our beloved Europe. So the private sector has a role. This reconnects me to the former statements of mine when I was insisting on my privilege of being citizens of this multicultural Europe and the privilege of getting independent to promote such a culture internally in my business and in Marburg, but also on my clients, through my clients. You see, only when a family can be felt truly understood about the responsibility that these families have in carrying on their wealth, in carrying on their culture, we can work together. When a common base of values is there, then the professionality that we can offer, the solutions that we can offer, can be rightly fitted. If this is not happening, then our role cannot be maximized in the effects of promoting a culture within families, our clients, and defending the idea of talents that this wealth brings with them.
And when you think about the role of wealth in society right now, how do you see the changes in the next years and decades? Will it change significantly also into that direction? Or how do you perceive that?
Well, the discussion is very open, and we understand, having dedicated lots of time to traveling and, of course, reading and, of course, contributing to some research from university and from bright minds across our continent. The discussion is very open. What I feel, and especially at the end of this decade, the first decade of 2000, is that the discussion is very open because of the need of the public sector to react to crisis. You see, for the past, I would say, 40 years, we have assisted on some trends that have trends in organizing the public sector that have come across the idea of accumulating debt. Right? It's the first time in history that the growth of capitalism, the growth of capital markets is aligned to the growth of accumulation of debt. The origin of the word debt can be very scary. You know that in German has a very peculiar meaning. Schuld is connected to the concept of being responsible or carrying a burden.
Exactly.
It's much more than in the Latin world or the English world, the Anglo-Saxon world. And so dealing with that has consequences. They hit the can and prolong the discussion has been the relevant discussion for the past 40 years. It looks like the only way governments have found to react to crisis was expanding balance sheets of central banks by promoting a culture of spending more, save less, invest more, be less productive, invest less in work, invest more in capital. This paradigm is very risky. It's very risky for several reasons. I will highlight a couple of these reasons that are relevant to my understanding. The first potential risk that I foresee is that diminishing the capacity of the human being to control dynamics connected to his life, diminishing the capacity of understanding human being, determines dominance of some against the more. I doubt I want to live in a world where myself and my daughters are determined by others who are not very well defined, identified. And so if the effect of the monetary policies that have dominated the past 10 years due to QE1, QE2, and QE3, which are we currently in, have determined some battles being won. Yes, the control of prices, which was, by the way, generated within the balance sheets of banks, so it was entirely monetary. These effects do produce also results in the culture about the human being. And I would be very cautious about this. When an instrument, which is money, is determining the comprehension about the central role of the human being, I'm always scared. As a father, as an entrepreneur, as a responsible of assets of others. The second effect that I see as pretty risky is that government consider these being the only potential alternative available, by diminishing not only the human being, but also the freedom that the human being have in order to foresee and create their own future. I don't believe that this is the only alternative. I don't believe in the full dominance of debt and the monetary policies over entrepreneurial capacity of families and of communities. I do believe in the infinitive capacity of human beings to responding to challenges, including the challenge coming from the abuse of our environment, determining the side effect of climate change, which is evident to all of us. The more we travel, the more we see effects of an abuse, of a misuse of the environment. And so our role again as entrepreneur, as representative, as starter of new initiatives in the private sector is a role also committed to point out that we do have infinitive capacity to respond to our challenges. We are much more than regulated bodies. We are much more than only executors of decisions taken somewhere else. And as such, our investments should respond to indications and desires that are much more connected to the responsibility. That's why they respond. The responsibility of those who should be coming after than to us living today with these means. This is very much impacting the way we build up our asset allocations. This vision about the role of the human being and the freedom connected to this role, which is of course bringing responsibility to the truth. This way of viewing the future, viewing ourselves, does impact the way we build up asset allocations, we build up and foresee solutions. And we also consider what is the right return given a risk to our capital. Therefore, we decided to move our understanding of return from relative to a benchmark, which is the general rule that any other asset manager or any other family office would stick to, precisely based on that regulation that I'm suggesting is reducing the human being to an executor of rules of others. This vision has been evolving to a vision of total return that allows a right amount of capital to be returned given an investment, regardless of the performance of capital markets. And this vision is not only connected to the extension of the period whereby the return is measured. It's much more than that. Of course, in 10 years' time, my average return may be an X number, 3, 4, 5%. We are not suggesting that by having a fair return on your investment, you should be extending your vision on the investment period. By the way, this is exactly the paradigm that any other private bank or promoter of financial solutions or financial product would suggest to an investor. We are completely oppositing this view because we know that this view is very risky and is extracting good faith from investors which are not fully aware of the potential of capital markets. That's why we are first investors in all projects that we promote. We make ourselves responsible for what we do. Our families are behind our investments and foremost the first in line to invest. And we are seeking, myself and the people at Marbeck, the people that work with us, the numerous people that work with us, we are simply using well our talents and using well the experiences that we have done in capital markets through these past 2 decades, not more than that. By assuming that the dominance of wording, the dominance of concept is not accepted de facto, but is digested, is reconsidered, is reanalyzed every day. We believe that some good solutions could be considered out of this way of thinking, new way of thinking. more free way of thinking.
So you spoke about the ignorance as well of financial institutions and leading by example. Are there other ways to raise awareness also?
You're very right, absolutely right. You see, the risk of the unique way of thinking, pensiero unicum, is very high. Digital culture has discouraged most youngsters to go to the source of the news, investigate it, and try to extrapolate several of the truths that can emerge from this research. When internet started, I remember my first dissemination of my essay in 1992 was based on one of the first approaches to internet. It was, one of the first example of internet research in my times. Almost 20 years, 18 years after, internet has exploded, and so luckily, the potential of the correct distribution of knowledge is there. We have more access to infos than ever. We should consider ourselves as very much privileged to have the facility and low barrier to enter knowledge. However, this facility of access has not come along with a desire, a willingness of new generations to fully exploit this potential. And we are all questioning ourselves why the response has not been peer to the responsibility of past generations that were willing to promote a more distributed culture and a more distributed culture of access, freedom of access to these resources. Answers to these questions are very varied and are not unique, are not unilateral. What I can tell you is that it's a tendency to rely on what others are suggesting. While, back again to my previous points, I like the idea that our human being, a human brain, can be tested several times during your life. And by being tested several times, you can make cases out of these tests. Cases means experience. Traveling, encountering people, starting businesses, not stopping where others want you to stop. Express your full potential. Yes, of course, the risk of failure is always there. The limit of the human being is always there. We should never forget it. I'm more scared about the illusion that the human being is, as the big tendency of pensiero unicum is suggesting, is infinite, like the infinite growth of monetary policies, or is endless, like the endless war on terror that was initiated in 2003, or experiments around the infinite capacity of the human being to change attitudes, even sex habits, etc. This scares me more than the risk of failure. Risk of failure is connected to what we do every day. We should be promoting more the idea that learning by doing means also risking the challenge of success. But I can't see any other way of considering our lives fully lived, if not connected to the risk of failure. Again, that's why private sector keeps on investing in startups for new ventures. We consider this availability of capital and availability of time to understand more as angel capitalism. I'm not sure we are angel of any sort. We are simply promoting a culture for youngsters to express more, to be more, to design more, not limiting their experience of life to what others are suggesting them to be.
That means you're optimistic that we can redefine what wealth really means.
I would rephrase, the intuition is very clear. I would rephrase your comment by saying that I am prisoner of hope.
Mm-hmm.
Because I trust, I have faith that human being has done in many critical moments in history can find internal resources to much better use external resources, having experienced that we are much more connected today than ever before. And so rather than considering artificial intelligence as a thing, as an object, I will consider intelligence of connection, of connection, as a way to express our desire better, in a clearer way, potentially in a more fair way, towards those who have not.
Beautiful words. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. It is always a pleasure to get insights not only on the financial world, but also on life itself. And I'm thankful that we are in this great partnership and hopefully for many generations to come. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, and good luck for your fantastic projects connected to countries around the world that are in need to be encountered by youngsters like you yourself in Europe, but also from the domestic people there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.